Hey, welcome to 24/7 Marriage Podcast. I am your host, Javier,
I'm Shannon.
and we are glad you are joining us today. Here's the intro. What?
You have to unplug those headphones.
You want me to unplug my headphones that way?
Yes.
Okay, that's a little bit better. Welcome to the 24/7 Marriage Podcast. This is we're back on YouTube. This is something we have not done, and the reason why we have not done this is
because we're old and we don't know what we're doing.
No, Shannon, come on. We're in the marriage lab, and being that we are in the marriage lab full time across the country, taking the work of 24/7 Marriage state to state, to boot camps and workshops and all. It's not always easy to do a video podcast. And so now you get to see the beauty that is me and my incredibly beautiful wife next to me.
The marriage lab.
Yeah.
The fifth wheel.
Yeah.
So here we sit under the Labrador sign because it is right now the cutest part of the house where there's a counter and...
It's not the cutest part of the house.
Well, we tried other places and it just wasn't working. We tried us sitting on the couch until we're back in a house and we have a podcast studio that we can set up and it can be really cute. Yeah. This is what you get.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what you get.
Yeah. And so it's been good. So we are currently in, I don't know where I'm at. I'm in Idaho. We are in Idaho.
No, we're going to be in Washington.
But I'm in Idaho.
Yeah.
Currently, as we record this, I'm in Idaho. When you listen to this, I'm not sure where we will be, potentially in Washington. And we have a boot camp coming up in Washington and one in California.
For a whole year, you've been saying that we have a boot camp in Oregon, and I keep going, I know. We have a boot camp in Washington.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, so we'll be there with wrapping up the last boot camps of the year.
So maybe I'll be in Washington doing a boot camp, and you'll be in Oregon doing one.
Yeah. Yeah,
because you never know where you're at.
We can do them separately. So I was with somebody yesterday, and he gave me a tongue twister, and so I wanted you to try it. Ugh. It's you have to say it fast 10 times. Irish. Wrist watch.
Okay. Irish wrist watch. Irish wrist watch. Irish wrist watch. Irish wrist watch.
No, keep going fast.
Irish wrist watch.
Irish wish watch.
Wrist watch.
Irish. No. I cannot do it. Irish wrist watch. Irish wrist watch. Irish wrist watch.
You already get tongue tied on some words because you're not from this country. So.
Yeah, we were talking earlier how the marriage lab, as we go across the country, at times we pick up hitchhikers. And I don't mean people. Yeah. I mean insects or bugs that want to stay with us and travel state to state. And we love our good friends, Judd and Kelly. In Idaho, we were on their property staying as we were having some meetings in the area. And last time we were there, we brought some wasps with us, some nests, and we're in the lab. I don't know how you get
another consonant in there, but you managed to.
I'm not from this country, so I
it's
add.
It's just wasp.
Yeah. Excuse me.
My dog.
This is the joy of being in the marriage lab and doing the work.
Just tried to take my decorative pillow off a chair.
Yeah. So Shadow, our
oh my gosh,
our German service and protection dog wanted to pull the pillow down.
She got caught. So let's go back to the first year we hit the road, and we were in Idaho when we picked up bark beetles.
Now I don't know if that was from there. It was
in Idaho.
Maybe some mice.
They lived with us for like 3 years because
we picked those up in Wisconsin. No, in Minnesota.
Oh,
yeah, we got those in Minnesota. Okay. They traveled with us, and then we had some mice, very small mice, not an infestation, but some that got in, and that was in Idaho, and then the wasps were in Idaho, and the moths. So, like moths coming out of just wherever, just like consistently. Yeah. But anyways,
you know that I'm not a fan of bugs because it makes me feel dirty.
Yeah,
and I don't like it.
Yeah,
that's why I'm indoorsy. You're outdoorsy. So when there's anything creepy crawly, I get obsessive and I want to clean and I want to vacuum and I just can't stand it. But I know it drives you crazy too.
Yeah. So I was on a podcast yesterday or interviewed for a podcast.
How was that?
It was good. And we've done it before, but on this podcast with a good friend of ours who his podcast is Church and State. He we were talking about our spouses, and I said that I'm afraid of my wife, and not in a bad way, but in a good way. It's a healthy way that I'm afraid of her.
I kind of like that,
and she likes that. I told him, I'm a little bit afraid of your wife too. Like, they're two strong women. So
when I used to teach preschool, the other teachers used to tell me your kids behave so well, and I think it's because they're slightly afraid of Miss Shannon.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they were.
I think healthy fear is good.
I'm slightly afraid of you. So if I blink rapidly, it's because I need help. Like, send help quickly. All right, what do you want to get into?
There's so much to talk about. We're still getting so much feedback on I'm Not Okay episode. The comments that I've been reading on Spotify and Apple have been amazing, because so many people are saying thank you for shedding a light on depression, how it affects your marriage, and just being super vulnerable. So
yeah, and so an update on that, I think it still impacting. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, like, the very people I'm called to love and to serve are right now the ones that I can get annoyed with, and just being honest, and not because of the individual or the person. It's me, just feeling at times empty and still tired. And I think I'm doing better, but I am still having moments. And Shan has been incredible in terms of walking and supporting. Well,
I wouldn't say incredible.
There's been some moments where, you have been, and this is, I think, an important thing to talk about is Shan has been supportive. She has been encouraging, but there has been moments where she has been frustrated, and she has been, dare I say, a little mean.
Oh no, you're right.
No, harkening back to some earlier days of our marriage, it reminded me.
Yeah,
and
it's exactly what we're going to talk about
But
today.
I can understand that there's a frustration at times, and it can be a lot for the spouse who is walking with somebody who's navigating a difficult season, whether it be depression or anxiety, an ailment, a sickness, an addiction.
Yeah.
And having to walk through it consistently and be there, be supportive, walk alongside. I go, not taking abuse or even verbal abuse, but, walking with your spouse. It can still be tiring because there's still life that has to happen and things that need to get done.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm still navigating, walking through it. And Shan has been supportive, but I have to keep talking and I have to keep processing. And it's brought more things to light, more things to the surface that I have to unpack. And sometimes I feel like I'm taking up a lot of space in the marriage, and I probably do. And Shannon's got issues as well, and she's got things that she wants to navigate through, and that's important, that she has that space to do that as well.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I wanted to talk about today was when old habits creep back in. And this is just me being super vulnerable in that going through this season of depression with you at year 31, most days I feel like I'm offering grace, loving and serving, but then there's these other days where Shannon 1.0 is rearing her ugly head. And I don't like it because I'm so far removed from her.
Yeah.
But yet she's still there. And
well, and I don't know if it's that some of the behaviors, because here's the thing, I think the enemy knows very well, like, this is a faith-based podcast, so we talk about, right, we have an enemy and it's not your spouse.
Yep.
That he knows where he can get you and bring us back to those early days where we can grow frustrated or resentful, but also just allow how we're speaking to one another, and engaging with one another to allow it to win.
Yeah. And I've just noticed, definitely those first 5 years, I was oblivious to my behavior. I had a thick blanket over my head, and I was checked out and clueless because everything revolved around me and how I felt and how you made me feel and what you didn't do to make me feel better. So everything was kind of narcissistic in a little bit. But now my eyes have been opened, and I feel like I've walked so far away from Shannon 1.0 that when I do it, and I walk and I am rude to you, or I'm short with you, or you've frustrated me.
I get a little PTSD.
And I look at myself and I'm like, this is not who I wanted to be. This is not who I laid everything on the altar when God and I had an encounter, when he confronted me and I said, no more of this. And I laid it all down. But we're human, and in our humanity, things are going to happen and behaviors are going to come back up, and things that'll kind of set you off, or I don't like the word trigger, but here we are again navigating depression. And I'm frustrated because there's so much that I want to get done, yet I'm being, I don't want to use the word forced. I know that God is slowing us down on purpose so that healing can take place. And I feel like the Energizer Bunny, where I was like, there's so much I want to do right. Courses we need to get done, and then things that we want to get done.
And I feel the pressure of that, of like your dissatisfaction that I'm not getting a lot of things done. And I feel the weight and the pressure of that.
Yes.
And it's heavy on me. So I feel the pressure that I need to come through. And I think that's what a lot of men tend to feel at times. Like, I have to come through. Like I've got to show up or perform, whatever it may be. And that weight and responsibility that I know our wives will never fully understand, because you're not us, and I'll never understand what you walk through. But I want to be clear with something too, that, because I know there's people that listen to this as well that are not, they're like coming to a boot camp. They're like, oh, is this going to be like, or they're going to hear us at a workshop. They're like, oh, he's depressed. Is this going to be like, listen, I'm not debilitated. I'm not broken in the sense that, I'm not functioning. I'm not getting out of bed. I'm just being real with, at times, the moments that I'm walking through. But sometimes, like, I believe that depression is oftentimes the inability to be able to see what is next. And that's something I can struggle with, like not seeing clearly what is next, and then feeling a little stuck. And then I'll get tired or burnt out. And so it's not an inability to be able to function and still be able to minister to people and love them. I think we sometimes do our best work, if you will, out of our brokenness. And I think the same is true for you. So for Shannon, like, we're like that for you is what's going on, is that you're coming back to, you notice some of those habits that you're coming back to. And I've noticed why I've maybe arrived to this point also is a couple things that are just coming to the surface I need to navigate through, that God's revealing, but also, what are the habits and behaviors that I have not been doing well with, that where I've let my guard down, whether it's my time in my walk with God, whether it's my intentional prayer, whether I've been trying to handle things on my own. Like, what have I allowed back in where I had built good habits around that, but now I've allowed those things to slip a bit, and it can bring you back to a place where you're at before. And I think we do that often in marriage. Like, we're doing good, we're building these good habits, and then whether it's a season of difficulty, then we start to slip back into those patterns of behavior that weren't healthy.
Yeah. And that's where I've noticed my just slipping back into old patterns of communication.
Just stop it, Shin.
Okay.
Stop it. STOP.
IT. That's old.
Yes.
May Bob Newhart rest in peace.
Yeah.
And I realize how much it upsets me, but it also just kind of makes me sick to my core. So that's my personal journey. I also believe that the podcast called I'm Not Okay was really a breakthrough moment for us and our podcast. And we've always been really real with our audience, but that episode was really raw. And I just know that us moving forward, like podcast after podcast, we are going to share things from 31 years, but we also aren't afraid to be very real and vulnerable and share what's going on in real time with us. Why would we want to hide that?
Can I ask you a question?
No, can I give you a compliment first?
Sure.
Okay. But what I want to say is in this season, you've been very gentle with me and very forgiving, because I have not been nice at times, and I hate that about myself. But thank you.
There's no crying on this podcast, Shannon.
There's been a lot of crying lately.
I hear you, and I receive that, and yes, I do forgive you.
Yeah, I know you do.
I know where it's coming from. I know your heart, and we've had some serious discussions. I'm like, Shannon, why are you talking to me that way? Why are you answering me that way? I just asked what you're making for dinner, and like the other night, it's like, I'm making chicken. Oh, okay. I was like not trying to control. Like, are we having it with something? Potatoes. Jeez. I'm like, I was only asking because if we're having salad, I was going to get a dressing or make a dressing. So I just wanted to know. Like, literally, it's been those things, like just simple things.
And I would love to sit here and blame it on menopause or
no, but I also like
life.
have to be better at how I'm responding as well, because I'm like, what? Like, so I want to be sure that I'm responding well, not just reacting. And but no, thank you for saying that.
No, but the moment I said chicken and potatoes, I was sitting over in the chair, and I was like, there was
and then I'm telling her
reason that I should have said that.
And
way.
Then I'm telling her, I'm gonna adjust your microphone for you so that way
thanks, honey.
people can actually hear you. Then I am telling her that, honey, if you just would respond and like you could just say, honey, we're having chicken, we're gonna have it with potatoes. Is there something else that you'd like that's just great. Oh yeah, I was saying about a salad. Oh great, okay. Like it's easy, but instead it leads to me being frustrated. What I found myself lately doing is being like, I just don't want to talk to her then. I'm just gonna be quiet, and I don't want to release the Kraken.
Wake the bear.
I don't want to poke the bear or wake it up. So I'm just going to, okay, I'll just give her some time. But then I found myself getting a little resentful and frustrated. Like, oh, this feels like what it was many years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like, I don't like her right now.
Yeah. You always love me. You just don't like me.
I mean, I like you at that moment. But how are you now recognizing that? How are you then going back and rebuilding that habit and that discipline of how you are navigating this? Because I mean, I think, in our marriage, and a lot of people are probably experiencing that there's these seasons we feel great connected, and something like this happens, or something takes place, or a struggle, difficulty, addiction, whatever it may be that you're encountering.
Yeah.
And you find yourself kind of going back to those things. I think a lot of people do that. What do you do? How do you catch that? And what are the steps you take to get yourself, I don't want to say back to, but to reset?
The first thing that I do is I remind myself that that's how I acted. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
And so often I hear women that I coach, men and women at boot camps, talk about, this is who I am. I grew up this way. This is just how it is. This is who I am. And it's like, let's stop identifying with things that are negative, that God didn't place there, that God's not calling us to. It's like, so my bad behavior and my mistreatment of you is how I acted, but it is not definitive of who I am. And who I am is a daughter of God. And remembering that I am called to love, serve, protect your heart at all costs. And even though I do not want to be in this season again, because we have a lot to do and a short time to get there. Is that a song from Dukes of Hazzard? We've got a long way to go, but a short time to get there.
I have no idea. No idea.
Were you allowed to watch Dukes of Hazzard?
Yeah, the guy jumping into his car and like, yeah, Daisy Duke, her little Dukes, her little shorts. Yeah, of course. As a young boy, I watched that. She had shorts on.
I can't believe my in-laws let you watch that. Okay. So I have to remind myself whose I am and what I'm called to. And honestly, just going to God and saying, please forgive me. Like, this isn't who I want to be.
I mean, I think there's a piece where what I have done is I have to go back and have to reset and recognize what have I allowed in? What are the patterns of behaviors that I have now allowed back in that have not been healthy, have not been good?
Yeah.
And it's very subtle at times that it starts sneaking in, and eventually you get to that place you're like, man, how did I get here again? Well, I negated the fact, or sorry, I'm not negated. I wasn't doing well with my daily disciplines, intentional in how I was caring for self as well, and then also how I was responding and how I was, moving towards you. So you recognize, okay, there's been these habits that I've had that have been healthy and have been good, and where along the line have I let those down because I'm either reacting to what you're saying and doing and how you're treating me. So now that good habit I've built of like being understanding or empathetic, or having effective communication by coming to you and saying, I feel that when you're talking to me, it's coming off this way. Like, this is what I'm feeling. I can just get in the bad habit again of just like, I'm going to shut down, or I'm not going to talk right now. I'm just going to leave her alone. And you can grow bitter and resentful.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is for you as you're listening to this, but you know what it is in those moments that haven't been healthy for you, what you have done and gone to, and your behaviors. And maybe this is just a moment for you to say, man, where have I allowed some bad habits back into my marriage? And maybe it's not even related to
and not habits, but just like where did I let some boundaries kind of fall to the wayside?
But I'm saying maybe it's not even related to something you're struggling. Maybe just in general, you've allowed some bad habits to come back in, some places where you were disciplined and now you are not.
What if it's a new bad habit?
Well, I mean, it could be something you developed, but I'm saying like maybe it's not even in relation to like something you guys are navigating. You just simply, over a period of time, life has gotten busy, and you're out of this habit of dates, or you're out of this habit of like really communicating effectively how you're feeling and how their words impacted you, and you just stopped doing that. You were doing that really well, serving your spouse. Right? Maybe you've gone out of that and just finding ways to intentionally serve because they haven't been doing it. Or you've gotten busy. So I think it's a reset. Like, what have I allowed in and what do I need to get back to?
There's also like a personality type, and I'll just speak for myself in that I'm very task oriented. So I like to do a task and complete it. And sometimes if you take that approach with marriage, it can work for a little while, but like we went through depression, we conquered it. We're over it. So it's like laundry. I love folding laundry and putting it all away, but you know what? Next week it's going to be back. But I love tasks that only come up very seldom, like painting your house. You're only going to paint your house once every 10 or 15 years. So it's like you do this monumental task and then you don't have to do it again for a while. So for me, being task oriented, I can't have that approach with marriage because God didn't call me to like just fix Javier, get through it, show him a little bit of love, and then plow on to the next thing.
That's a good analogy. That's what people do. People will wait until something big happens and then they'll address things in their marriage. They'll address their lack of communication, their lack of intimacy, their lack of pursuit of one another, their lack of serving one another. Like, they will wait until big things hit and they won't even talk about what's happening, all the small moments that led up to it. They wait. And it's like, well, we're going to pay attention to our marriage every, 3 years, 2 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, when something big happens, as opposed to doing the daily disciplines and the daily habits of pursuing and serving and loving and effective communication and dating one another. So that is very true. Like, people wait.
Well, and I also believe that it's what we see happen with a lot of couples. We wrote a blog about it called After the Boot Camp High. And it's like they go home so excited to be intentional, to pursue, to love, to communicate, to resolve conflict. And they do good for a little while. And then they revert back to old ways, old habits.
Everything fights for their attention. And
yes. And that's the place that we find ourselves in, because you said, gosh, many years ago, that your marriages don't die in the big moments. They die in the tiny little things that get piled up into
they don't blow up overnight. There can be big things that happen.
Yeah.
But really, it's all the little things that led up to that. Because when those big things happen, if you have been intentionally and building habits to pursue one another and serving again and loving and communicating well and spending time together and building intimacy, and just conversations about how you're for each other and believe the best in each other. As you're building this foundation and you have Christ at the center, when those big moments happen, they're difficult and they're hard, but yet you are going to be able to navigate and walk through those because you've been intentionally, continually building on your foundation.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh my gosh, this big thing hit, and like we haven't been doing well, we haven't been communicating, we haven't been connected, like we've always been at each other. So now this big thing now just becomes even bigger, and we don't know how to handle it.
It's like a house of cards. It's going to come crashing down because there was no foundation built. But if I could speak to those spouses who feel frustrated because they're revisiting things that are coming back up in their marriage, whether it's an addiction that keeps resurfacing or a bad habit, or just as simple as we committed to doing date nights and we did good for 3 months, and now your spouse could care less about continuing with good habits. Like, don't grow bitter and frustrated with them. That's not going to win their hearts back. It's not going to solve the problem. And so often we let bitterness and resentment kind of rule our tongue, especially, and we just become almost passive aggressive with them, to where your spouse is never going to be able to win because you're never giving them a chance to, because you've already created a verdict in your mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think we have to have, I would just encourage you, as you're listening to this, do what Shannon has done, because she's severely messed up right now, and really put your habits in check.
Thanks, Javier.
No, I think I would encourage you in your marriage to look at what you've allowed in, maybe what this season is revealing. And here's the thing, is that these moments reveal what you have invested into or what you haven't. They reveal the habits you have built, the ones that you haven't. They reveal where you're at in terms of how you're seeing and viewing your spouse. So these situations, what you might be facing right now currently in your marriage, is going to reveal the choices, the decisions, the habits, everything that you have built into your life. And I'm hoping it's going to reveal, like, hey, we're for each other. We believe the best in each other. We're going to walk this out well. And if it's not, if it's revealing the fact that you haven't been good or intentional about how you've been moving towards one another and communicating and
can I add something?
And sharing feelings and opening up and being emotionally connected, this is maybe a little bit of a place for you to say, okay, I need to get back to that. I need to get back to build, the habits that we have created, the disciplines we place into our marriage, into my life personally, and get back on track in those areas. And first things first is your walking relationship with God. Like, if you are not in a place where, and I use the word intimacy, have that relationship with Christ and that intimacy with Him, then you cannot expect that things are going to go well in your marriage. And because out of the overflow of your walk with God, you're going to be able to love your spouse well.
Yeah.
Not always perfectly, but you're going to want to honor God first. And out of that, you're going to be able to honor your wife and your children. And
keep in check your self-talk. And keep in check that you don't fall prey to believe the lies that he's never going to change. She's always going to be this way, because those are the things that the enemy wants you to sit on and stew on and think about. And then you formulate this whole plan of, my marriage is pretty much over because she's never going to change, and I'm just going to check out, and I'm not going to try, and I'm not going to pursue. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. So stop with the self-talk and check yourself on what you are thinking about.
Well, and people say, like, oh, here we go, or here we go again. Oh, this happening again. Okay, so then don't walk with them. Don't support them. What is going to be your option? Like, this is what you said yes to, even though you didn't know when you stood at the altar face to face. This is what you said, I do. I do. I mean,
think of 31 years ago, we were standing there. If somebody was to come up and they're like, let me tell you what 31 years is going to look like. You're going to go through depression twice. You're going to go through a season where you're going to want to leave your wife. You're going to go through a miscarriage. You're going to go through the loss of a church. You're going to go through all this stuff. We'd be like, let's just go
that's why I always thought vows should be very different. They should be like, I promise to love you when you've got one leg and you've lost an eye and you're going through addiction. And, we've gone through, like, listing all these things that could happen.
Yeah.
And then would we stand there and say, because here's the thing, when you get married, you pretty much know that person you're marrying, and hopefully, some of the family of origin and maybe even the baggage and some of the history.
We know it, but we ignore it.
And some of the things they've been through. So that's coming into your marriage, and there's going to be some things that you have to navigate and that you said yes to. And just because you said I do doesn't mean tomorrow all those things they dealt with go away.
Yeah.
Like there still can be the temptation of the addiction and all these other, like, still there. So that's why I always thought vows should be very different to really outline.
Oh yeah.
Would we say
what you're signing up for?
Yeah. What would we say to that? Like, oh yeah, no, I do take all of those things. So you can say, oh, why is this happening again? And fine, buck and run. You can go, or you walk with your spouse. And I'm not, if you're in a place where there's abuse, physical, emotional abuse, I'm not condoning that. What we're saying is like, we've had some friends who have walked through addiction and they walk through those valleys and it keeps showing up for one another. And that's not perfectly, but that's a powerful thing. And you can say, why is this happening to me? Or you can say like, what can we do together to navigate this? And this season is difficult for me, but how can I love them? How can I serve them? And you got to do that together with other people though in community, because going it alone is very difficult. Anyways. Thank you for being part of the 24/7 Marriage family, for joining us on this podcast. I don't know if our affiliate links are up and all that kind of stuff on our podcast. Yes. But we want to make sure that you are supporting those who are partnered with us in this podcast. Mm-hmm. And one of those is Stand Up Apparel. And I'm not wearing, every single podcast, I'm wearing one of those shirts pretty much because it's all that I own. So Gerard, we appreciate you. And Stand Up Apparel, phenomenal, comfortable t-shirts and hoodies and hats.
Yes.
They do an incredible job. And we now have some of our apparel on their site as well.
Yeah. They're making all of our merch now too. Yeah. They've taken over and making all of our merch. Yeah. But we also support Every Life, which is a pro-life diaper company made in the USA. And we love their mission and what they stand for. And all those links are down below.
Yeah. So we appreciate you. And always remember that in marriage,
you don't have to.
You get to. Have an incredible week. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the 24/7 Marriage Podcast. Help us expand our reach by rating and leaving us a review on iTunes. Make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For more information on the work we do and how to support the 24/7 Marriage, head on over to 247marriage.org and click on Partner with Us. Until next week, remember, in marriage you don't have to, you get to.